everyone. We thought we'd jump in, and today we have a special guest with us. Heidi Hess-Saxon is the acquisitions editor at Ave Maria Press, and Heidi is what brought Deb and I on our caregiver companion journey, and we'd like to kind of just share a little bit of that with you, give you an inside scoop on some of the behind the scenes action that goes on in helping a book come to fruition. So Heidi, welcome. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So Heidi, I'm curious from an editing perspective. I'd love to hear you share just a little bit about, so we're first time authors with you and the editing process, because I'll tell you, as someone who stepped into this, didn't really know what to expect, never worked in a big publishing house before. So go ahead, let everyone know what it's really like.
Well, it all starts out with a proposal, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You have to go through and figure out who is the book for and how are we going to meet a unique need. We'd go online and see what other books were out there like this and how ours would be different and better. And you write all that up, and then you had to write your sample that showed exactly how you were going to approach this topic. And that probably took the better part of a couple months, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then we had the committee give their feedback and went back to the publisher and to the marketing team and the design team and sales team, and everybody gets together around this big table, and I present it to the team, and they looked online and saw the Nourish for Caregivers brand that you've been developing and all of such tremendous potential there, how this would feed on that, and sort of one would feed the other, which is what is really an ideal thing. I think there's many people out there who could be beautiful writers, and not all of them understand that symbiotic relationship of how you're developing and presenting that message on multiple platforms is what creates a stable platform that allows you to support the sale of a book. Because anymore, there's so many, millions of books out there that are looking for their right audience, that you really need to be able to present your message in a lot of different ways before you can begin to think about a book. That's just the reality of the marketplace today. Mm-hmm. So anyway, then we went in and we finished up the manuscript, going back and forth and figuring out which are the needs and which are the chapters. And then we got it into what we thought was a really good shape. And then you created this beautiful, you're one of the very few authors I've ever seen do this so systematically. And it was such a treasure because it just made my life much easier, creating chapter by chapter all the images that you thought would be good, and creating where you got them from, and where the permissions would come from, and what the costs would be, and figuring those out. And then I could just send those to the creative department, and they can look and see what made sense from a budget standpoint and everything. Then we went through the copy editing and then the proofreading and multiple steps of looking at this book over and over, and each time it settles into something more and more concrete and real, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. And rich.
Until finally you get to see the proof you look at. Did it have color or was it black and white? It has color, didn't it?
It had color.
Mm-hmm. I see it in color because you saw it online. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's just with every round it gets a little more concentrated and beautiful and focused, and it just seems more real, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the journey I get to walk through every author with. It's just such a privilege to see how that heart message that they have turned into something. It's almost like having a child in a way, because it's this new force, this new life that comes forward and can reach people in a whole new way. And then, and like a child, after it arrives, there has to be a certain amount of support that takes place as you sort of help it to get its independence as it goes out into the world. And that's where our marketing team comes in. And you've had your meeting with the marketing team and figuring out what are the activities that we need to do to help the book reach its intended audience. So right now with COVID, it's a little challenging for a lot of authors. The people who are out there speaking and the people who are out there doing these other activities are finding themselves kind of twiddling their thumbs and looking for new ways to do it, which is why I'm really happy to see how Ave has put together author support resources like that group that I was mentioning to you earlier. There are things that can be done, and it's people like the two of you who I think are going to wind up benefiting in the long run, not only because people are going to be more desperate for that kind of support and really needing this book, but also because you're not dependent on the physical presence of talks and things like that, that you can have channels to be able to offer this to people. They can go find it on Amazon or find it at their local bookstore. I think this book is just very timely for that reason. So.
And Heidi, I would have to say that, if I had to say anything to another author who's looking to work with a publisher, and, one of the greatest lessons I had in all of this was learning to let go and trust your publisher, trust God to guide, because there is no way, had I designed the cover, it wouldn't be looking like that. It wouldn't. And the insides wouldn't, it truly is a collaborative effort.
Yes.
And that part of letting go and really letting the spirit kind of work together amongst all the various teams. I mean, Kelly, could you have even imagined the way it now looks and the way the insides ended up?
Absolutely. And I think that's part of the beauty of it, is that the gifts and the talents of each of the people in the different process all rise to the surface. And so you have, if we had created that cover, it wouldn't look like that. But because you have someone who is so gifted and blessed in that their talents rise to the surface. And I think Ave Maria Press has been so wonderful about pulling together the best of the best to create something so beautiful, and allowing, that freedom and that liberty and that, God working within each person and their gifts to rise to the surface.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. That's really nice to hear. And I'll be sure to pass on the compliment to the team.
Oh, yeah. Well, and we have always said too that we have the best editor around. She's so amazing.
You are. And because it's a passion of yours, Heidi, you're living it too.
Yeah.
Like I would imagine, I don't know, because I've never done this before, but in working with other editors who perhaps maybe didn't have much of a personal experience like you did, you brought such richness to this through your editing, through your coaching. You never once tried to control it. What you did was you let that kind of bubble up, share those thoughts and ideas, and then it was amazingly.
Although I will say, there were a couple times there where, I don't know if you remember this, but in the first round of development, I found myself having to set it aside for a while and come back to it. Because, as an editor, you have to have a certain level of objectivity and being able to rise above and say, okay, what's going on here, and where are the holes and where are the gaps and redundancies and things like that. And I found myself, I kept getting sucked into the material and trying to attend to it on a much more personal level, which made it hard to lift up and do that higher level stuff. And so in some ways, so I had to set it aside and come back, which made it more arduous process as far as the timeline goes. But I think it also speaks to how useful and helpful it is, the material. Because if somebody like me, I'll tell you, I don't read a lot of books for pleasure. If I wanted to do something for pleasure, I'll get an audiobook. Because when I have that written page in front of me, my mental red letter comes out and I start, oh, they should have said it this way. It's horrible. It's a horrible thing, horrible habit. So I listen to the audiobooks and then I'm happy, and then I can just get by the story. But in this case, it was just such a beautiful and timely message in many cases that I just know that your readers, when they finally get it in their hands, are going to be so blessed and are going to want to pass it on to all their friends and their family members too, because there's never just one caregiver, is there? Most cases there's not. Most cases it's a community or a village. It's the sister out in Chicago and the brother out in New Mexico and the sister who flies in once a year for the annual Christmas whatever, so that you can get away, and like so on and so forth. And then there's, like you said, the professional caregivers, the adult daycare people, and all these people who work together to give you the support that you need. So we're gonna have to think about those other parties and see what we can come up with for them. But in the meantime, this caregiver's companion is exactly the beautiful gift so many caregivers are going to be able to be blessed by.
Well, Heidi, thank you for spending some time with us and sharing some thoughts and giving us a little peek into what goes on in the editing world. And thank you for all that you've done to help bring this support and encouragement and book to life. Thank you.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you. We're blessed. Bye-bye.